Maria had always lived a quiet life. She came from a small town, where her mother worked at a bakery and her father drove an old taxi. They were poor, but they taught her something more valuable than money: honesty and hard work. When Maria turned 22, she moved to the city in search of a better future. After many rejections, she finally got a job as a maid in the mansion of a well-known billionaire businessman named Richard Lawson. Richard Lawson was one of the most successful CEOs in the country. His company was famous for luxury hotels and real estate. People often said he had everything: money, fame, power, and a beautiful wife named Vanessa. But behind the golden gates and shining chandeliers, the mansion held secrets no one knew. Richard was a serious man, always busy, always thinking about business. Vanessa, on the other hand, loved parties, designer clothes, and attention. To the world, they looked perfect, but the truth was far from it. When Maria first arrived, she was amazed by the beauty of the place. The house was like a palace: marble floors, golden curtains, and a staircase that looked like it came from a movie. But what caught her attention wasn't the beauty of the mansion, it was the silence inside it. The walls seemed to hold sadness, as if even laughter had forgotten its way there. The other servants whispered that the couple barely spoke anymore. Maria, being new, stayed quiet and focused on her work. She was the kind of person who didn't talk much. She did her job quietly and carefully. She cleaned the rooms, served breakfast, and kept everything in order without making any noise. Her soft steps and polite nature made her almost invisible. The other maids often teased her. They would laugh and say, "Maria never talks. Maybe she doesn't even have a voice." She would smile shyly and continue working, never answering back. Inside, she believed that silence was safer than speaking too much. Richard rarely noticed the staff. He was too busy dealing with business meetings and phone calls. But he once saw Maria when she accidentally dropped a tray and quickly cleaned the mess without a word. He was surprised by her calmness. Most people would panic or apologize endlessly, but Maria just fixed the mistake and continued working. Something about her quiet discipline caught his attention, though he said nothing. Vanessa, on the other hand, didn't like Maria much. She thought Maria was too plain and didn't fit the mansion's image. "She doesn't even smile properly," Vanessa once told the head housekeeper. "I want people around me who look happy and bright, not someone who walks like a ghost." The housekeeper nodded, but knew Maria was the most hardworking person on the staff. She did the work of two people without complaining. One evening, as Maria was cleaning the study room, she heard loud voices from the living room. It was Richard and Vanessa arguing. They didn't know she was nearby. "You never have time for me," Vanessa shouted. "All you care about is your business meetings and your money." "And all you care about," Richard replied in a tired voice, "is spending it. You haven't asked about my work, my health, or anything real in months. Everything for you is about luxury." Maria froze. She didn't mean to listen, but the voices echoed down the hallway. She quickly moved away, pretending to clean another corner. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about what she heard. She had always thought rich people's lives were perfect. But now she saw that sometimes, even in the biggest houses, people were lonelier than those in small homes. From that day, Maria started noticing small details. The way Richard would come home late and sit silently in his office, staring at old family pictures. The way Vanessa would host parties but look bored even while smiling. Something felt broken between them, like a beautiful vase with cracks no one could see. Despite the tension, Maria continued doing her work with full dedication. She was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She never spoke unless someone asked her a question. Some of the new staff even believed she couldn't speak, but she simply preferred silence. It helped her notice things others missed, like when Richard's coffee cup was always left half full, or when Vanessa often hid expensive jewelry in strange places around the house. One rainy afternoon, Maria saw Richard standing alone near the window. He looked tired, lost in thought. She gently placed a cup of tea on the table beside him. "Thank you," he said softly, not even turning his head. She nodded and left quietly. That small moment, though simple, touched him. It was the first time someone had shown him silent kindness in weeks. The staff began to notice that Richard was starting to respect Maria. He never raised his voice at her, never ignored her work. Vanessa didn't like that. Once she said sharply, "You don't need to thank the help, Richard. That's what they're paid for." Richard didn't answer. He simply looked away, and Maria lowered her eyes, pretending she didn't hear. Days turned into weeks, and the atmosphere in the mansion grew heavier. Vanessa seemed more restless, often pacing around and making long phone calls behind closed doors. Richard became quieter too, focusing more on work and less on home. Maria could feel that something bad was coming, though she couldn't explain why. She often prayed silently while cleaning, asking God to protect the house and bring peace to the people living inside. She didn't know that her prayers would soon be tested in the most unexpected way. Late one night, while most of the staff were asleep, Maria noticed lights still on in Richard's office. She thought maybe he was working late again, but then she saw another shadow inside, not his. It was Vanessa. Maria hesitated near the door, wondering if she should knock or leave. What she didn't know was that her quiet nature, her habit of noticing small things, was about to change everything, and not just for her, but for the billionaire whose life she silently served. That night would reveal the truth hidden behind the mansion's shining walls, and the poor maid who never spoke would soon prove that sometimes silence holds more power than words. That same stormy night, the mansion looked different. The wind howled outside, and the rain hit the windows like tiny stones. Most of the house lights were off, but a few still glowed faintly through the long corridors. Maria had finished her usual chores, but stayed a little longer to arrange the study room. She always liked leaving things perfect before she went to her small servant's room. As she walked down the hallway with her cleaning tray, she noticed something strange. The light in Mr. Lawson's private office was still on. That was unusual because he usually turned it off before midnight. She thought maybe he was working late again. But when she went closer, she realized the door was slightly open, and she could hear soft footsteps inside. Maria peeked carefully through the small gap. Her eyes widened when she saw Mrs. Vanessa standing beside Mr. Lawson's desk. He wasn't there. Vanessa looked nervous. She kept glancing at the door as if afraid someone might come. In her hand, Maria noticed a small silver vial, like a perfume bottle but thinner. Maria frowned. She couldn't understand what Vanessa was doing so late in her husband's office. Then she saw her take Richard's favorite wine glass from the table and slowly open the vial. The smell that came out was strange. Vanessa whispered something under her breath, something like, "You'll never control me again." Maria's heart began to race. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could feel it wasn't right. Her hands trembled as she watched Vanessa pour the contents into the drink and carefully place the glass back exactly where it had been. After that, Vanessa looked around the room to make sure no one had seen her. Satisfied, she quietly walked out, closing the door behind her. Maria hid behind the corner, her heart beating so loudly that she thought it might give her away. She stood still for a moment, trying to think. Should she go and wake Mr. Lawson? Should she tell someone? What if no one believed her? She was just a maid, a poor maid, and Vanessa was the billionaire's wife. If she said anything wrong, she could lose her job, maybe even be blamed for something she didn't do. But then she thought about the kind man who had once thanked her for serving him tea. She remembered how lonely he looked standing by the window that day. He was strict but never cruel. Her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't stay silent now. Maria waited until she was sure Vanessa had gone upstairs. Then, gathering all her courage, she pushed the office door open and walked inside. The room smelled faintly of wine and perfume. The silver glass sat neatly on the desk, waiting for Richard. For a moment, Maria's hands shook so badly she almost dropped her tray, but she reminded herself why she was there. She quickly took the glass and went to the small sink in the corner. She poured the wine out carefully, watching the red liquid swirl down the drain. Then she washed the glass and replaced it with fresh wine from the bottle in the cabinet, the same one Richard usually used. Before leaving, she wiped the table clean, making sure nothing looked unusual. Then she took a deep breath and quietly left the room, praying she had done the right thing. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Richard. He entered the office, still on a phone call with someone from work. Maria was still there, pretending to dust the shelves. When he saw her, he raised an eyebrow. "Still working, Maria?" he asked softly. "Yes, sir," she replied politely. "Just finishing up." He nodded, ending his call. He looked tired, his face pale from long hours of stress. He picked up the wine glass she had replaced, unaware of what had almost happened. As he took a sip, Maria's heart pounded. She turned quickly so he wouldn't see the worry in her eyes. This house would fall apart without people like you, he said suddenly, his tone kind. Thank you for always being careful. Maria forced a small smile and quietly left the room. She didn't sleep much that night. Every sound made her jump. She kept thinking about what would have happened if she hadn't seen Vanessa. But she also felt scared. What if Vanessa found out what she had done? The next morning, the mansion felt tense. Richard came downstairs for breakfast, calm and polite as always. Vanessa greeted him with a forced smile. She looked surprised, even confused, to see him looking perfectly fine. When he sat down, she kept glancing at him, as if expecting something. But nothing happened. He was perfectly normal. Maria served the food quietly, pretending not to notice the strange atmosphere. Vanessa's face slowly turned pale, and she excused herself from the table. Richard noticed but said nothing. A few hours later, he went to his office again to review some security footage from the night before. He had been told that some files were missing, and he wanted to check who had entered the room. As he watched the footage, something unexpected appeared on the screen. He saw Vanessa entering his office at midnight, looking around nervously. He saw her take his wine glass and pour something into it. His eyes widened. Then moments later, he saw Maria enter the room, empty the glass and refill it carefully before leaving. Richard sat still for a long moment, trying to take in what he had just seen. He called for the head of security to confirm what he saw, and there was no doubt. Maria had quietly saved him without saying a word. That evening, he sent someone to bring her to his office. When Maria arrived, she looked nervous, thinking she might have done something wrong. Richard stood up and said in a calm but serious tone, "Maria, I saw the footage from last night. You can tell me the truth. Why didn't you come to me immediately?" Her voice shook slightly as she answered, "Sir, I didn't want to cause any misunderstanding. I just wanted to protect you quietly. I thought maybe no one would believe me. So I did what I could." For a moment, there was silence. Then Richard said softly, "You didn't just protect me, Maria. You saved my life." Maria lowered her eyes, tears filling them. She whispered, "I only did what was right, sir." Richard's voice was firm but full of emotion. "The world doesn't have many people like you anymore." That night, as Maria returned to her room, she felt a strange mix of fear and peace. She didn't know what would happen next, whether Vanessa would find out or whether her life in the mansion was about to change completely. But she knew one thing for sure. She had done the right thing, even if no one ever thanked her for it. In the quiet of her small room, she looked out the window at the city lights and said a silent prayer. Little did she know this small act of bravery was only the beginning of something far greater that would soon change her life forever. The days after that stormy night were tense inside the mansion. Maria continued her work as quietly as ever, making beds, cleaning rooms, and polishing furniture. But now every time she glanced at Richard, she noticed a different expression on his face. There was gratitude in his eyes, mixed with something else, curiosity, respect, and a quiet admiration. Richard had been shocked by what he saw on the security footage. He realized that Maria, a young maid from a poor background, had acted with courage and intelligence that few adults could match. She had risked her job and even her safety to protect him, a man many considered untouchable, and she had done it without asking for recognition or reward. Richard's thoughts often wandered back to that night. He remembered the fear and tension in the mansion, and he remembered Maria's calm, careful actions. He knew Vanessa's betrayal was serious. The woman he had married, the one he trusted, had tried to harm him for her selfish reasons. It hurt him deeply, but his focus quickly shifted to Maria. She had saved him quietly, without complaint, and with complete honesty. One afternoon, he called Maria into his office. She stepped in nervously, holding her cleaning cloths and tray. She was used to being called in for small tasks, not for serious discussions. But Richard motioned for her to sit. "Maria," he said softly, "I want you to know that what you did the other night, it changed everything. You didn't just follow your duty. You acted with intelligence, courage, and honesty. That is something rare in this world." Maria lowered her eyes, embarrassed by the praise. "I only did what I thought was right, sir," she whispered. "I just wanted to help." Richard smiled faintly, but there was seriousness behind his words. "Helping isn't just about doing chores, Maria. It's about making choices that others won't even dare to make. You have a strong heart and you don't even realize it." Maria felt a mix of emotions, pride, relief, and surprise. She had never been praised like this. Most people treated her like she was invisible. She had always worked quietly, believing that was all she could do. But hearing these words from the billionaire she served made her feel like her life had changed. The next day, Richard called Maria again, this time in the presence of the head housekeeper. "Maria," he said firmly, "I want you to have a new role here. Not as a maid, but as my personal assistant. You will have a proper salary, benefits, and the opportunity to learn and grow. You've proven that your abilities are more than anyone realized." Maria blinked in surprise. She had never imagined anything like this. She had dreamed of living a simple life, helping her family and maybe saving a little money for the future. She had never thought she would rise to a position where she could learn from someone as influential as Richard. I don't know what to say, sir," Maria said softly. "I only know how to work hard and be honest." "That is enough," Richard replied with a gentle smile. "Honesty and hard work are qualities more valuable than wealth or education, and you have them in abundance." At the same time, Vanessa's behavior became more erratic. She realized that her actions had failed and that Maria's quiet intervention had saved Richard. Her frustration and guilt made her leave the mansion shortly afterward. She moved to another city, and her presence slowly disappeared from Richard's life. With Vanessa gone, the mansion felt different. There was less tension, less fear, and a sense of calm. Maria continued working, but now she had a new purpose. She was no longer just a maid. She was someone Richard trusted, someone who had earned respect not through status, but through courage and honesty. Richard often asked Maria for advice on small matters, how to organize files, how to plan his day, and even sometimes about personal choices. Maria, shy as she was, offered her honest thoughts. Richard listened carefully. He found that her ideas, though simple, were often wise and practical. Her quiet observation and careful thinking were helping him in ways no one else could. Maria's family back home was overjoyed when they heard the news. Her mother cried tears of happiness, her father smiled proudly, and her younger siblings looked at her with admiration. They couldn't believe that their humble daughter had changed her life in such a remarkable way. Despite her new role, Maria remained humble. She never boasted about what she had done. She still worked hard, still cleaned rooms when needed, and always treated everyone around her with kindness. Her humility and honesty made her even more respected among the staff and among Richard's colleagues. Over time, Richard grew fond of Maria in a way he never expected. Not as a maid or assistant, but as a person whose integrity and courage had touched him deeply. He often said quietly to himself, "If it weren't for her quiet strength, I wouldn't be the person I am today." Maria, on her part, never let pride take over. She continued to serve with diligence, understanding that true value lies in actions, not recognition. She also began to learn more about business, management, and leadership from Richard. He encouraged her to read, take courses, and expand her knowledge. He wanted her to have the opportunities he had never expected to give anyone. Months passed, and Maria's life transformed completely. From a quiet, poor maid, she had become a trusted assistant of one of the country's most powerful men. But more than the position or money, what she gained was respect, trust, and the understanding that courage and honesty always make a difference. One evening, as Maria finished her work and looked out of the large mansion window, she remembered the stormy night when she had first saved Richard. She thought of how fear had made her heart pound, yet how determination had pushed her to act. She smiled softly, realizing that the smallest act of bravery could change lives, not just hers, but those around her. Richard, watching from his office, noticed Maria standing quietly by the window. He felt a deep gratitude and admiration. He knew that true heroes were not always those in movies or news, but often the people who worked quietly in the background, never asking for praise, and yet making the most significant difference. Maria never spoke about what had happened to anyone outside the mansion. She continued her life quietly, helping Richard, learning new things, and supporting her family. And yet everyone who saw her courage and integrity understood that she was more than just a maid. She was a symbol of honesty, bravery, and the power of doing the right thing when no one is watching. Her story, though simple, became an inspiration in its own way. It showed that no matter where someone comes from, how humble their beginnings may be, true strength lies in character. And sometimes the most silent people have the loudest impact on the lives of others. Maria's life had changed forever, but she never forgot her roots. She remembered the small town she came from, her family and the lessons they had taught her about honesty and kindness. And in the mansion she continued to serve with a heart full of courage, proving that real heroes are those who act with love, integrity, and quiet bravery every single day.